Every spring, millions of Egyptians pour into parks and the banks of the Nile to celebrate Sham Ennessim, a joyful feast of fish, onions and sunshine. But just days earlier, Christians around the world celebrated Easter, a sacred holiday of resurrection, renewal, and life. Two different festivals, two different religions. But what if I told you they share the same ancient DNA? Let's rewind the clock, not by centuries but by millennia, to ancient Egypt. The ancient Egyptians lived by the rhythm of the Nile, its flood, its fertility, and finally, its dry season. That final season was called Shemu, the time of harvest and drying the land. And to honor it, the Egyptians threw a festival. They ate fermented fish, spring onions to ward off evil, and lettuce for fertility. And what's more, they did it outside, surrounded by nature, just like what modern Egyptians do in Sham Ennessim today. Sham Ennessim, meaning smelling the breeze, is celebrated on the Monday following Coptic Easter. Its origins date back to around 2700 BCE during the ancient Egyptian dynastic era. Initially known as the Shemu festival, it marked the onset of the harvest season and the arrival of spring. Ancient Egyptians celebrated Shemu with outdoor activities, picnics, and specific foods, traditions that persist today. What is Shemu? Shemu, SMW, is the name of the third season in the ancient Egyptian calendar. The Egyptian year was divided into 3 seasons: Akhet, inundation; flood season, Peret, emergence; growth, plowing season; and Shemu, harvest, season of drying and reaping, roughly March to June. Shemu marked the end of the agricultural cycle when crops were gathered before the scorching summer heat. Multiple festivals and rituals occurred during the Shemu season, particularly tied to harvest, rebirth, and honoring deities. Examples include the Feast of Min, which took place in the month of Paoni, around May or June. Min was a fertility and harvest god. Celebrations included offerings of the first fruits of the harvest, public processions, and phallic symbolism emphasizing fertility. Ancient Egyptians performed ceremonial plowing and harvesting. Depictions and inscriptions related to this are found in the Temple of Min at Koptos, Luxor Temple, and Medinet Habu. Inscriptions and reliefs at Edfu Temple, Dendera, and Abydos mention seasonal festivals tied to Shemu. Calendrical texts on coffins and temple walls describe the agricultural cycle, including Shemu. Papyri, like the agricultural almanacs found in Papyrus Harris Worst, contain accounts of religious and seasonal observances. Temple account scrolls often noted when offerings were due during Shemu. The modern Sham Ennessim is a direct cultural descendant of Shemu. It preserves elements from the ancient harvest celebrations, such as outdoor feasting and offerings, which have evolved into springtime picnics. Onions used for purification and protection in ancient times are now eaten as green onions. Fish, associated with fertility and the god Min, is now eaten as fermented fish, known as fasik. Spring flowers used in ancient rituals are still used today for decorating. The transition happened through the ancient Egyptian dynastic era, Hellenistic, Coptic, and Islamic Egypt, with each culture adapting the festival without erasing it. The Shemu season and its associated festivals, particularly those honoring fertility, rebirth, and the dead, are deeply embedded in Egyptian religious life. The continuity of themes, renewal, spring, harvest, life after death, are found in both the Coptic Easter and the ancient Egyptian Shemu, bridging ancient Egyptian and Christian theology through cultural evolution. So how did a harvest festival survive the ancient Egyptian dynastic era, the Greeks, the Romans, the Christians, and even the Islamic rulers? Through something we call cultural layering. Ancient Egypt had a solar agricultural calendar based on the Nile flood cycle. Shemu was the third season from March to June, marking harvest and dryness before summer, marked by festivals, agricultural rituals, offerings, and celebrations of rebirth and fertility, like the Feast of Min and the beautiful Festival of the Valley. Ritual foods like onions, lettuce, and fish had religious symbolism. There were public processions, music, and temple feasts, connection to cosmic order known as Mot, and seasonal regeneration. Hellenistic Egypt, from 332 BCE to 30 BCE. After Alexander's conquest, Egypt was ruled by the Ptolemies, a Greek dynasty. There was a blending of Greek and Egyptian religious practices, known as syncretism. The Ptolemies adopted local festivals to legitimize their rule. Deities like Min were equated with Greek gods, such as Pan and Dionysus. Greek spring festivals like Anthesteria, which celebrated flowers, wine, and rebirth, paralleled Shemu customs. The timing and symbolism remained intact, but gained new Greek cultural layers. New artistic styles emerged in temple reliefs, still celebrating the agricultural cycle. Coptic Christian Egypt from the 1st century CE to 641 CE and continuing. Christianity found fertile ground in Egypt, particularly in Alexandria, from the 1st century CE. Before its recognition by the Roman Empire, Egyptian Christianity was influenced by existing religious and philosophical systems, including ancient Egyptian beliefs, Judaism, Gnosticism, and Hermeticism. The development of Christian theology in Egypt in its early stage led to significant ancient Egyptian theological impacts on modern Christian beliefs. Egypt embraced Christianity early. By the 1st century CE, Alexandria was a Christian hub. By the 4th century, Christianity was dominant under the Coptic Church. Shemu's seasonal date was now tied to the Coptic calendar. The spring festival became aligned with Coptic Easter, also known as the Feast of the Resurrection. The Monday after Easter became Sham Ennessim, still a day of joy and nature. Islamic Egypt, from 641 CE to the present. The Arab-Muslim conquest of Egypt led to the spread of Islam, but Egypt's cultural memory persisted. Sham Ennessim was tolerated because of its neutral and agricultural nature, celebrated by Muslims and Christians alike, especially in the Fatimid and Ottoman periods. Retained foods included fesik, which is fermented fish, onions and lettuce. Retained rituals included outdoor family picnics, colored eggs and flowers. Islamic scholars noted it as a folk tradition tied to spring and the Nile, not to religion. Even today, religious authorities mostly accept it as a cultural or heritage holiday, not a religious one. Summary of transformation across eras. In the ancient Egyptian dynastic era, Shemu, the harvest season, symbolized fertility and renewal. It was a sacred seasonal rite that established the root festival. During the Hellenistic period, Greek syncretism brought spring and Dionysiac joy, politically embraced, and the festival was retained and adapted. In the Coptic Christian era, the post-Easter Monday celebration symbolized resurrection and rebirth. It was integrated with Easter and reframed as a joyful feast. In the Islamic era, post-Coptic Easter celebrations focused on nature and unity. It was accepted as a secular fest and became a national tradition. The continuity of Sham Ennessim reflects the deep cultural memory of Egypt. It outlasted religious transformations. It remained inclusive and non-exclusive. It adapted symbolism, rebirth, resurrection, life, to match each new era. Through every conquest and creed, Egypt never let go of its spring ritual. Why? Because it wasn't just religious, it was human. Now let's shift focus. What about Easter? How did Christians come to celebrate it, and why in the spring? Rooted in Jewish Passover, or Pesach, Jesus was crucified and resurrected during Passover. Early Christians called it Pascha, which is still used in Greek, Arabic, and Coptic. Earliest celebrations date back to the 1st and 2nd century CE. These included fasting, overnight vigils, and baptisms. Easter was celebrated on Passover, the 14th of Nisan, or the following Sunday. The Council of Nicaea in 325 CE standardized Easter to be the first Sunday after the full moon following the spring equinox. Easter became a symbol of rebirth, resurrection, and light conquering darkness. Sound familiar? That's because the theme of rebirth in spring is as old as time, and Egypt had been living it for 2,000 years before Christianity ever arrived. Let's talk symbols, because the eggs, flowers, sunrise rituals, and even the fish, they're all telling the same story. So, what do ancient temple priests, Coptic Christians, and your aunt grilling fish in the park have in common? They're all part of a 5,000-year-old story, and it starts with Shemu, the harvest season of the ancient Egyptians. Shemu marked the end of Egypt's agricultural cycle. The Nile had flooded, nourished the soil, and now it was time to reap the land. And the people? They celebrated big. They honored gods like Min, the god of fertility and renewal. With feasts, offerings, and ritual processions, they gathered outdoors, shared food, and honored the cycle of life. Now fast forward to early Christianity. The same spring spirit gets a new name, Easter, celebrating the resurrection of Christ. Jesus' resurrection wasn't just a miraculous event, it was a symbol, life after death, light after darkness, hope in the spring. Sound familiar? The ancient Egyptians already knew that story. They told it through Osiris, killed, buried, and reborn in the afterlife. The form changed, but the feeling stayed the same. The core theme of the ancient Egyptian Shemu is the rebirth of the land, fertility and renewal through harvest, with a resurrection symbolism in the Osiris myth, death, dismemberment, and rebirth in the underworld as god of the afterlife. The core theme of the Christian Easter is the resurrection of Jesus Christ, triumph over death and new spiritual life. And just look at the symbols, you'll be surprised how much they still echo. In Easter, eggs represent the empty tomb and the miracle of life. In Sham and Ennessim, Egyptians color them, crack them, and share them, just like ancient Egyptians celebrated the bursting seed of life within. The early Christians used the fish as a secret symbol. Copts eat it to break the Lenten fast. Ancient Egyptians offered it to the gods of fertility. Today, Egyptians ferment it into fasik and feast like their ancestors did. Lettuce was sacred to Min, the plant of vitality and new life. In Sham Ennessim, you'll find it in every picnic basket. Shemu was celebrated under Ra's sky. Easter has sunrise services. Sham Ennessim, it's all about the breeze, the blossoms, and that ancient Egyptian instinct to honor life by being outdoors. Even the seasonal timing, the ancient Egyptian Shemu was in late March, early summer, end of Nile's fertility cycle, beginning of harvest and dry season. The Christian Easter is pretty much around the same timing, spring, first Sunday after full moon following the spring equinox. The current Egyptian Sham Ennessim is on Monday following Coptic Easter, always in spring. There are some striking similarities in the rituals as well. Some rituals in the ancient Egyptian Shemu included visiting tombs, offering food to the dead, Nile bathing, anointing, perfumes and rituals of rebirth. In Christian Easter, Jesus is the first to rise from the dead. Some traditions include cemetery visits, baptism symbolizing spiritual rebirth and resurrection. Shemu became Easter. Easter shaped Sham and Ennessim, and through it all, the Nile kept flowing and the people kept celebrating. This is more than cultural history. It's a spiritual fingerprint passed down through the ancient Egyptians, popes, and parents. A shared story about hope, harvest, and the human spirit that refuses to forget where it came from. So this spring, whether you're celebrating the resurrection, the season, or just smelling the breeze, you're part of something ancient. Part of Egypt, part of the world, part of the story. Even in how we celebrate, the echoes are uncanny. Open-air feasts, visiting the dead, decorating with flowers, and bathing in sunlight. Today, Sham Ennessim is one of the few holidays that unites Muslims, Christians, and non-religious Egyptians alike. No sermons, no borders, just food, family, and the breeze of spring. And Easter? From Rome to Cairo to Rio, it's still a time to believe that death is not the end. whether spiritually, seasonally, or metaphorically. So next time you crack an egg on Easter, or eat that tangy fesik on Sham and Ennessim, remember, you're part of a story that began 5,000 years ago, when people first paused to celebrate the return of light, warmth, and life. Whether you call it Shemu, Pascha, or Sham and Ennessim, you're honoring the same eternal rhythm of the earth and the soul.